And today we'll be focusing on the latest economic updates from Egypt and the world. We will be starting straight away with the main stock markets from Egypt, and then we will be moving on to the United States, Europe and America, as well as the currency markets and the oil prices. We'll be starting with the EGX 30, the EGX 70 and the EGX 100 and how they have fared for today, starting with the main EGX 30 index for the Egyptian stock market with an opening price of 53,729.97 points, and for the closing price it was 53,627.32 points, and with an exchange rate of negative 0.19%, it had ended downwards. From the EGX 30 to the EGX 70, the bigger index for the Egyptian stock market, as it had an opening price of 18,300.85 points, and it closed at a price of 18,422.68. It was also ending at an exchange rate of 0.67%. And finally, the EGX 100, the bigger index or the biggest index on the Egyptian stock market, it had an opening price of 24,133.04 points, and the closing price was 24,255.77, and it was at an exchange rate of 0.51%. And we will be moving forward to the American stock market, as the Dow Jones was last seen at 52,747.32. It was up 1.03%. The Nasdaq was last seen at 24,876.91, and it was down 0.22%. And the S&P index, it was last seen at 7,428.78 points, and it was up 0.21%. And in Europe, we'll be starting straight away with the FTSE 100 in England. The United Kingdom, more specifically in London, was last seen at 10,893.19 points. It was up 0.2%. The CAC 40 in France, it was last seen at 8,418.32 points, but it was down 0.5%. The DAX in Germany was last seen at 25,509.81 points. It was up 0.2%. And finally, the Stoxx 600 was last seen at 646.90, and it was down on the day 0.01%. As for the Asia Pacific and the stock markets today, the Nikkei 225 index was last seen at 61,434.19 points. It had an exchange rate of 1.5%. It ended downwards. As for the Hang Seng, was last seen at 25,807.92 points, and it was up a full 2%. The Shanghai Composite Index was last seen at 3,828.47, and it was up 0.4%. And lastly, the Kospi Index, it was last seen at 5,663.24, but it was down a marginal 5.98%. As for the crude oil prices, the WTI was last seen at $81.95 a barrel. The Brent crude was at $88.44 a barrel, and the natural gas was last seen at $2.71 a cylinder. And as for the metal prices, we move to the gold and silver. Gold was last seen at $6,730, and the silver was last seen at $96.50. Moving to the currency markets, as the US dollar was last seen selling for the Egyptian pound 50.75 Egyptian pounds, and it was buying 50.65. The UK sterling pound was last seen selling the Egyptian pound at 67.53 and buying 67.26 Egyptian pounds. The euro was last seen selling the Egyptian pound at 57.87 and buying 57.65 Egyptian pounds. The Chinese yuan was at 7.50 Egyptian pounds at the selling, And for the buying price, it was 7.47 Egyptian pounds. And finally, the Japanese yen, it was selling at 31.07 Egyptian pounds and buying 30.90 Egyptian pound. And for the main top story for today, it comes from the rate-setting bank meeting for the United States of America, as the Federal Reserve policymakers are losing patience with inflation, but they may not be ready to turn the frustration into action, not this week anyway. Meeting in Washington Tuesday and Wednesday, the Fed was expected to keep the benchmark interest rate unchanged. Members of the Central Bank's Rate-Setting Committee may not be so reluctant to act when they gather again next September the 15th and the 16th. Inflation has been stuck above the Fed's 2% target for more than 5 years. And the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, told the Congress earlier this month that he had no tolerance for the elevated inflation. Warsh is presiding over the second policy meeting for this week. We will be having a quick break. Stay tuned. After the break, we will be having with us on Market Insights Engineer Mohamed, the member of the Arab Forum or the Arab Council for Energy. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching Market Insights, and I'm honored to be having with me over the phone Engineer Mohamed Attiya, the member of the Arab Council for Energy. Thank you very much for being with us today on Nile TV International and the Market Insights.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Anytime. First of all, we are seeing the rebound in terms of the oil prices, as we have seen on Monday. We had our usual conversation, Engineer Mohamed Attiya, regarding the oil prices, and today we have seen another rebound in terms of the prices after the fresh strikes taking place around the Strait of Hormuz between the American and the Iranian forces. How would you comment on this volatile market that we are witnessing nowadays, and ever since the war had erupted between the United States, Iran and Israel since the month of February?
Well, no, in my opinion, the oil prices in the current situation is affected by the strikes between Iran and US, mainly for the oil. And as I said before, currently the oil prices is around $88 to $90 per barrel, and this incline and decline is supported by the amount of the oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz out of the 20 million barrels per day which are passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And what is the current situation? The current situation is the last statement by President Trump about the attack, the expected attacks, the heavy attacks on the Iran strikes and the Iranian country.
Yes.
And in my opinion, this attack, if it will be happen, the prices will be volatile until 100 to 110 dollars per barrel. But in my opinion, also, this is not a single impact on the oil and gas only, because as you know, the oil and gas are base materials and like base oil and base materials for petrochemicals, and these petrochemicals are on all the commodities and all the everyday products like the fibers, plastics, and also the chemicals. The chemicals are being used in the manufacturing of each product in the world. So this incline in the prices isn't impacted only on the oil and gas, but also on the all commodities. And when we are talking about the importing countries like Egypt and some countries like in Asia and Europe, the current situation is the global oil demand is around 100 million barrels per day, and the Strait of Hormuz partial closure and full closure affect on the decreasing of the supply with around 10 to 15 out of 20 million barrels per day, which affects directly on the budget and energy bill of the importing countries.
Engineer Mohamed Attiya, we just read about the prices for the oil markets today, and the WTI was signaling at about $81.95 a barrel, $81.95. The Brent crude was at $88.45. You've mentioned that it could be reaching upwards to $100 a barrel once again if the tensions persist around the Strait of Hormuz. How did you see the measures that were taken by the Egyptian political leadership and the Egyptian cabinet if things get to the worst situation, the worst case scenario in terms of the oil prices? And in your opinion, when can that happen, if it ever happens?
Well, in my opinion, the Egyptian situation is good when we are focusing on the supply. We are already securing the oil and gas supply by different kinds of contracts and from different sources, which is affect on the energy security level of our country. But this is the positive point from the picture, but the other side or the negative side of the picture is the how much we pay for that, how much we pay for the energy stability and the energy security in Egypt. Currently, due to the high volatility of the oil and gas, especially the gas which is used for the energy generation and the electricity generation, and also the oil products which are used for the vehicles and transportation, commodity and transportation vehicles. These two products affect on the national budget and decrease the economic growth, because the foreign currency and the foreign investment, which was targeted to be invested in like the economy and the sustainable economy, is driving to generate the electricity. So the Egyptian situation is good when we are focusing on the security and the supply, but it is difficult, but we can pay for that from the economy side.
Yes, and we have seen for the past couple of months, maybe for the past 4 or 5 months, the hardships that are being witnessed by the Gulf Cooperation Council countries in terms of the daily lives as well as the economy, especially that they have been affected severely by the targeting of the Iranian forces against the GCC countries as well as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz on several occasions. So they have lost a lot of investment opportunities, economic opportunities. In your opinion, do you think that Egypt could be making up for the lost ground, that they could be drawing those investments into Egypt for the upcoming few months, especially with the ongoing situation and the tensions in the region?
Yeah, I would like also to highlight that today's meeting with the Prime Minister and the Petroleum Minister regarding the securing of the strategic reserves of the oil, which is a main component for the energy security and oil supply security. So many types and many kinds of investments when we are talking about the oil and gas, which is go out from the Gulf and affected from the Iranian strikes, especially the storage and the storage capacity, like the storage tanks, when we are talking about the oil and oil products. These kind of projects are directing to the Egyptian country and the Egyptian infrastructure. So sometimes we have some opportunities in the oil and gas when such events in the Middle East happen.
Yes, Engineer Mohamed Attiya, as a member of the Arab Council for Energy or the Arab Forum for Energy, and Egypt is moving towards diversifying the energy basket according to the directives and the guidelines of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We're not just depending on the oil and gas and coal, as you mentioned, but we are moving towards the renewable energy. How do you see the prospects of having a more diversified energy basket for the future, especially with those guidelines in place?
When we are mentioning the diversification of the energy sources, we can state that Egypt is going well in this type of power generation. It is not only the renewable energy like solar and wind, but also the clean energy like the nuclear energy generation. And the plan is clear. We are targeting about 42% of the energy mix to be generated from clean and renewable energy. And this kind of goals need some efforts when we are talking about the electricity network. So the electricity network investments are high investment and highly cost investment, but it is required and it is a must to build a dynamic energy mix and stable energy mix to pay more investment in the electricity network to absorb the maximum amount of the renewable energy and the clean energy without any disruption or any damage for the network itself. So we are targeting more investment or much investment in the electricity network rehabilitation and also rehabilitation and increase in the electricity generation by renewable energy and the nuclear energy.
Engineer Mohamed Attiya, the member of the Arab Council for Energy, thank you very much for being with us today on Market Insights and Nile TV International. And this brings us to the end of this episode for Market Insights. Thank you for watching and goodbye.